is. Bill, how are you?
I'm okay, Alan. How are you, buddy?
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, that's about all we can do, huh?
Absolutely. And actually, for those tuning into this podcast, let me do a formal introduction. We're talking to the great Bill Kelly, formerly of the Bohemian and Dakota, and Bill is in Nashville. And so we're doing this, obviously, over the phone. Like I've been doing all these podcasts, even with the people locally. I've been doing them over the phone for the past week or so. Bill, the first thing I want to do is express my condolences to you on behalf of so many people here in northeastern Pennsylvania on the passing of your longtime friend and musical partner, Jerry Hludzik.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks, Alan. We've been watching with the family. We've been watching the response, and his wife told me the other day that she was just beyond words. It's just been over the top, but so much more than what anybody anticipated, which makes everybody really grateful. Because when you do what we do for a living, you just kind of you do it. And you hope that it reaches people. You hope that it makes a difference. But until something comes up, something tragic like this, or some other event, something comes up, and the people start to respond and let you know, it's very gratifying. And I know that Jerry was always he's a humble guy. He could be an arrogant son of a gun sometimes when you're going to head with him on something on a record that you're working on. But he was truly, he was a humble guy, and just appreciated knowing that people appreciated what he did. And it was just that simple.
I want to talk to you a little bit about how you first met Jerry and some of your experiences with him in the studio. But maybe to begin here, only 2 years ago, we had a friend, Michelle Riley, and I believe she worked with Jerry's son, Eli. They put together a nice event here in Wilkes-Barre for Jerry, jamming for Jerry, with a lot of musicians playing. And Jerry was able to be there and say hello to people. That was the last time I saw him. And he got up on stage that night and really did a great job. And then I know a couple of months later, I believe you got together one more time at the Tomato Festival and played.
Right.
And so I'm assuming they were the last two times that you performed with Jerry. How special is that, Bill, to have had that just as recently 2 years ago with him?
Well, God, how do you put that in words? I was sitting in my living room one night with my wife, and we were just talking about the history, and we knew Jerry was sick, and we didn't really know what to do. I just said, I have got to do something. And so I called Michelle. Michelle and I are old friends. And I said to my wife, I said, the only person I can think of who has the energy, who lives in the Valley, who could help me put this together would be Michelle Riley. Mm-hmm. So I called Michelle, and of course, Michelle. She was just up, and she was bouncing off the wall. She couldn't wait to get started on putting it together. And I hooked her up with Eli, Jerry's son, and together we all just kind of kept throwing ideas around and throwing names around, and before you know it, people were jumping on board, and it literally had a life of its own. And how that made me feel standing on that stage with him, possibly for the last time. And you don't realize this, but we were upstairs in a hotel room rehearsing with the band, and Jerry sat on the edge of the bed and didn't say a word. He didn't sing. He just sat there. And so John Lawrence and I and Louie, we just, whatever happens, happens. We're here. Got to do this. But we didn't know. At that point, we did not know. And we didn't know whether he was going to show up or not until I heard the voice come in on Dear Love, the first song that we started with. And all of a sudden, the harmony was there. Jerry was there. He looked over at me with this internal smile that he and I had one of those things that you don't have to use words, you just know. And we looked at each other, and it was just, can it get any better than this?
I bet it was amazing. I mean, everybody that was there was so moved. It was a moment, and I'm glad that you had that together.
Oh, so nice.
And that you two had it together, and that we all had it with you. It was very special.
Well, we grew up in the Valley, and the Valley when we grew up was a wonderful time for music. Kids today don't have what we had growing up in music. And the bands were good. Bands like Ralph, Muttley, all these different bands, great musicians like Frank Vankowski and Roby Schnitzel, and on and on and on. All these great musicians. The competition was fierce. 8th Street Bridge, another great band. So you had to step on stage in the Valley with your A game every weekend. That you were at a high school dance. You could go in Scranton. You can hit 5-6 different high schools, all of them having high school dances on a Friday night after a football game, and the place is slammed with people, and the bands were all great. So, growing up in that atmosphere was really something special for me and Jerry and all the guys.
You met at
back
LCC,
then,
correct? In the late 60s, early 70s?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You met at Lutheran County College in the late 60s, early 70s, I'm
thinking it's like 69, the winter of 69.
That's what I thought.
Or early might have been early 70s, something like that. But I went to King's College. Jerry was at LCC, and my girlfriend, who I later married, Susan, she and Jerry were friends, and I didn't even know it. And I would go down to meet her for lunch, and this guy would be sitting on the steps trying to sell me equipment. He was trying to sell his gears, microphones, mic stands, because he wanted to go to Florida, and he needed the money, so he was selling everything. And I was kind of like, I was feeling, kind of like a big deal, because the Boys had already had a regional success and people were recognizing me, and I thought I was all that. And who was this annoying creature sitting and pestering the fire out of me? And anyway, what later happened was we went on to the Boys. We were losing players, and we were going to do an audition. So she told Jerry that we were going to audition bass players. So who shows up for audition day but Jerry with his bass, and totally prepared. And he was great. I mean, he sang great. And when I harmonized with him, it was like, whoa, that's killer. And our drummer, Chris Hanlon, I remember the three of me, Chris, and Fran were outside in the cold. And we're going like, oh my gosh, he's so good. It makes such a difference, blah, 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 blah. And Chris is jumping up and down with his sticks. He's great to play with, So we went back in and hired him, and that was Jerry Hludzik, and that was how Jerry got on the bench. Shortly after that, we got a hold of our old friend Carl Syracuse, who had been with the Glass Prism and the El Caminos and stuff. We knew him for years, and we said, would you be interested? And he came on board, and with those two guys, the Boys were on their way. And Jerry made such a difference. And then I found out later that he played guitar, which was right up my alley, because if we could get Carl to play bass, Jerry to play guitar with me, we would have two guitars, 2 lead singers. This could be really fun. And that's how that transition happened from him to bass, from bass to guitar.
And at some point, you realize after you get him in the band, and he's going to be, your bassist originally, and backing vocalist originally. You realize he brings a lot more to the table, and he's a songwriter, and then you become collaborators for the rest of your lives, pretty much, off and on, but a lot on.
Mostly on. Yeah.
I just read this interview with Paul McCartney. He was talking about John Lennon. And he said that John only gave me one compliment in the 10 years or so that they worked so closely together. Only one time they were in the studio and Paul had played him Here, There, Everywhere. And John said, that's a good one, or something like that. And it was so rare it was so rare for John to have said that to Paul that all these years later he still remembers it.
Yes,
because it was and so you have that sort of creative rivalry within a band and friendship and love and competitiveness, and I've seen that with other groups that I've interviewed or befriended over the years. You and Jerry had a little bit of that, correct?
Oh yeah, Jerry and I we had an unspeakable rivalry competition, especially when it worked out to our guitar playing, because we knew we sang great together, but neither one of us was truly a great guitar player. But what we learned how to do is play just what we could play well, and not try to do things that we couldn't do well. And so we gave the illusion that we were better guitar players than we actually were. But we would fight over who's going to play what, because we go into the studio and we would record these harmony guitar parts that were really cool, and then we'd fight over who was going to do which one live. Well, you played it live. Well, I want to do it. And we would go at it, but all in good natured. And
in retrospect, they were little things, right?
Of course, they were little. Yeah, they were little things. But brothers usually fight over the little things, don't we? So that's. Do
you have a memory like that with Jerry, like McCartney had with Lennon, where he said something to you about something that you did that he liked and it meant a lot to you? You have a story?
You know what? I wish I'd had a story like that one. But Jerry and I were pretty freewheeling with compliments. When we respected each other's highly, and when he would do something that I thought was great, I told him it was great.
Oh,
and
good.
he did the same for me. We realized that as dangerous as an ego can be, a musician without an ego is nothing. I mean, you have to have the bravado, if you will, to stand behind what you write, what you sing, what you play, and stand in front of an audience of thousands of people. You've got to have an ego, and that ego has to be carefully respected and nurtured and helped along. I always encouraged Jerry, because I thought Jerry was a great songwriter. He would, and we'd afford, I was better at writing a verse, but he came up with some great hooks. His hook, Restless, Possession, these things that he came up with hooks that I wanted to jump in and sing on immediately. He would be sitting at the piano. He had this funky old beat up piano at his house in Dalton, and I would get up there and he'd be sitting at the piano and he'd say, "Listen to this," and he would play this piano part of melody or whatever, and then he would start singing the melody of the chorus and the hook, and I couldn't wait to jump in and throw my harmony in, because I just knew as soon as I heard it, oh, that's going to be great. That's going to be great. And I would jump right on it, and and then we would dig into the meat of the lyrics and so forth, but yeah, he had a real knack for great hooks. It gets easier, things like that. You just if it takes all night, that was his hook. Almost all of them were his hooks,
Bill, it was about a year and a half ago that I spoke with you, and we did a big story for the Times Leader and it ran in the Weekender as well, and it's up on my Music on the Menu blog as well, about your tour with Queen. And
yes.
we coincided that article with the release of the Bohemian Rhapsody film. I believe I talked to you on the phone for that story a week or so before the movie came out. So
yeah,
I assume you saw it. I assume you went
out
and saw the movie.
We saw it several times. We've got the DVD. Oh yeah, we got.
How did you think it captured Freddie? You think it did a good job? You knew him.
I think it did a fantastic. I'm sorry?
You spent a lot of time with him, so you would know.
Yeah, I thought it really did a wonderful job of the whole movie itself. And you can there's so much body of work. How do you put that in an hour and a half movie? I thought they did a great job. And what surprised me, because, we were with those guys every night, night after night, hanging, goofing around, being silly and whatever. And you get the impression that you think you know somebody, right? Especially after the length of a full tour like that. What I saw in the movie that I didn't see in person and live was how incredibly sad his life was, and the pain that he was in constantly, and that was sad. That was a sad part of the movie. So it was a wonderful movie, and at the same time, it was sad. And he loved the band. And Roger and Brian, everybody except Deacon. Deacon was kind of a putz. He did his own thing, and nobody ever saw him outside of the stage. But the other guys, I mean, they would, you know, they were on the side of the stage watching every performance, just about, you know, and great comments, and it was just wonderful. Freddie gave me the greatest compliment as a singer I ever had. He said to me one night, it was in Baltimore, the Memorial, I think we were playing. We finished our sound check, and I went back, and he was standing there. He was listening to the sound check, and he just said, "Kelly, how do you do that night after night after night?" He said, "I've never heard anybody do that like that." And I was just flabbergasted. I said, "Well, Freddie, I've been doing it every night for the last 10 or 15 years. It's just there, you know." And I was very grateful, and it was just a wonderful, kind compliment. He didn't have to tell me that. He didn't have to say that.
Yeah.
You know, he was Freddie freaking Mercury after all. I mean, come on.
I remember. Bill, I think you told me that story for the article last year.
Okay.
Because didn't you also say something to him along the lines of "That's how I put food on the table" or something like that?
Yes, I said that's how we make a living. That's how I feed the family.
Right.
It better be there, or we're in trouble. Yeah, and you know the guys, because I had such a high tenor, and Danny and Hawk would, you know, we'd get in the studio and they would look for opportunities for me to do kind of crazy things with my voice, and you know, of course I did it, and then I had to do it live. So, you know, night after night playing those clubs, it kind of put leather on my vocal cords, so to speak. But it was an honor for him to say something nice like that. It was great.
Do you have a favorite memory that involves Jerry on that tour? Like, was there a moment where maybe you two kind of looked at one another and said, "Man, you know, we're at Madison Square Garden tonight," you know, or something along those lines?
It's funny you say Madison Square Garden, because that's exactly it. We're coming. This is our first night at Madison Square Garden, and he and I are inside the arena, but we're not up on the stage yet. We're just looking, and the two of us are looking at people had taken bed sheets and written "We love you, Dakota" on the bed sheets, and they were hanging from the second tier of Madison Square Garden, and he and I looked at each other, and the two of us, we just both started to cry.
Oh, man.
The tears came down both of our faces, and we looked at each other, and then this big grin on both of our faces. And I forget what we said, but it was something like, you know, "Do you freaking believe this?" You know, and it was just, a very moment of gratitude.
Bill, what's so great about that story too is, you know, it's 9 years after Timothy. You know, it's a couple of different record deals later. It's after, you know, Jerry Kelly, and so, you know, for you guys to be standing there at that wonderful arena, you know, sharing the stage with one of the all-time greatest rock bands, and have banners there supporting you, it kind of showed a little bit of a lot of your fortitude and your drive that, you know, you know, because that's like I said, 9-10 years after Timothy, and you're still doing it.
Jerry and I, if nothing else, we were tenacious. I was, you know, I've never been one to give up on something or a goal that I have. Never ever have I ever given up on anything. So the best partner I could ever have would be somebody like Jerry, who not only could not understand the concept of giving up, but he was a pit bull about it as the same way. He was just, you know, he was just crazy. I mean, when he had something in his head that he wanted to get out of the way. It was just he was just that relentless, I think, and sometimes it drove me nuts because I could, from my perspective, I could clearly see that this was not necessarily an end of a dream or end of a goal, but it was a redirection into another direction. Not him. It was this goal or nothing. We were going to either do it or nothing. That's why when he and I were still writing music for the Boys, and the guys in the Boys were not interested in it anymore, they were done. They wanted to go back to just being a regional, local band, and Jerry, that was just not even up for discussion with me and Jerry. That was, we were just that hardcore,
driven, so.
Totally driven. And him, like I said, him more so than me. He just, driven. I don't know another word. Just driven.
Are you grateful? And I know the answer is going to be yes, so I guess we just have to talk about it more. But obviously there were some years where you weren't in communication, and Jerry had even told me the story about how he came down to see you. And I think he surprised you at a restaurant, and you didn't even know he was going to be there. You had told me the story as well. And, he really, extended an olive branch and really wanted to start working with you together again. Yeah. And you did. And you made some music together. You just made a great record a couple of years ago. Yeah. Obviously, I'm sure that's something that's really important to you now.
Yeah. He and I were together for 17 years, playing, singing, songwriting, touring, and the whole bit. And then had reached a point in our friendship where we were no longer friends. We just wanted nothing to do with each other at that point. And our last gig was Montage for 17,000 fans at the Mountain. That was a wonderful, wonderful gig. But at the same time, he and I didn't. I mean, I think WVIA tried to do an interview with us afterwards, and we wouldn't talk to each other. We wouldn't look at each other. It was terrible. And then we didn't speak.
There's plenty of video of that show.
Oh yeah,
I mean, on stage you guys are fine. I guess.
Well, yeah.
Props to you for being pros, because you wouldn't know it watching the video.
I know. It's funny. I have video of the interview afterwards, and it doesn't even look like the same band that was on that stage performing for the audience, But we were always, I think we were always professional about what we did. We didn't take our thing up on stage with us. That's where, it was left off. When we got up there, we made music, and that's what we were all about. But it was 15 years later, Jim Delacroce, very good friend of ours, also from Hazleton, very successful promoter and manager, called me on the phone. He was here in Nashville, and he said, I want to have dinner. We're going to meet at Longhorn downtown. Meet me. Okay. So I get down there, and I walk in, and who's sitting at the table but Jerry and his soon-to-be wife, Annie. And I'm thinking, you son of a gun, Delacroce, I'm going to strangle you. And we sat down, and we had dinner, and we buried the hatchet, not in each other's backs, but we truly buried the hatchet and said, okay. But, Alan, we went for months after that, and just occasionally chit-chat on the phone. It was like, okay, we buried the hatchet, now what? And I was working in my store. I had a store at the time, and it just crossed my mind, and I called him on the phone. I said, man, okay, we buried the hatchet. We can live with each other again. But if we were as good as people said we were, then what the heck are we doing? Because we weren't doing anything. We just kind of kissed and made up, and that was it. And I just said, if we were that good, man, what are we doing? And that's around the time we started to put together the first reunion, and then writing together again, and albums, and it just kind of started it back up together again. And it was a wonderful decision, no doubt about it.
And I think your fans, and speak on behalf of myself and a lot of people that I know that are fans, and us on on the River radio station. We're grateful for that because we've been playing your songs and ever since the last record. We played quite a bit of it, and I think that we're all grateful that you both were able to get to that place. And I want to thank you for sharing some of your memories with us here about Jerry. Now, to just switch topics briefly, Bill, we're in the middle of this nightmare. We're a month in now. You're in Nashville. First you got hit by a tornado, and then we all got hit by this. First of all, to take one crisis at a time, the tornado, were you okay through all of that? How far was that from where you live?
It was the main group of tornadoes that came through that just killed Mount Juliet, missed us by less than a mile.
Oh boy!
And it was very close. My son, my middle child, was managing a nightclub downtown, and it missed him by a block.
Oh wow!
It wiped out a place called Basement East, and one block away from that was the place that he was managing that night. So we were all very grateful that it missed us. But boy, it totally destroyed our church. Schools.
No, I'm sorry about that. I know that's an important part of your life. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, offices, dental office. I mean, you name it, it's gone. And every now I still go out that way where the bulk of the damage was. And every time I go by there, it just shocks me. Like, oh my gosh, I had forgotten that it was this bad. And I just feel my heart goes out to these folks that are still trying to rebuild their homes while they're dealing with this crazy virus thing at the same time. And so,
that's strange. The tornadoes. We had one in here in Wilkes-Barre. This is about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now. And
yes, I know.
It touched down up by the Wyoming Valley Mall. I'm sure you remember where that is.
Yeah.
And it's strange. There was one or two retail businesses, a Barnes and Noble, and another store, a little strip mall that was pretty much destroyed. I mean, some of them haven't even come back yet. The Barnes and Noble has, and then, I mean, literally 300 yards away, store untouched. It's fine. I mean, we don't have them here, so that was the first time any of us ever really got to look at one and see how they're incredibly destructive, and yet sometimes, like you said, a block away or so, you're okay.
Even closer than that, I mean, with some of these places in Mount Juliet where the tornado just kind of, it stepped around a hospital. It literally took a left-hand turn. It was about to hit a hospital. Took a left-hand turn for about 100 yards, wiped out a whole community of homes, and then came back on the original path where it had missed the hospital, and took out a Kroger and a whole shopping center. And it's just, it's bizarre. It'll literally take one home and leave the one next to it untouched.
Yeah,
it's just really bizarre. We get them pretty often here, but most of the time it's not that terrible. But boy, this was the worst one I think we've ever had, Nashville has ever had. So.
Well, I know the whole country was thinking about Nashville during that time, and then we got hit with COVID-19. You've been doing studio work and working in the music industry in Nashville for a long time now. I mean, I know that there's not much that can be done right now. There's no shows, there's no venues, there's no nightlife, there's no concerts. And how are you getting through it? How are you weathering this storm professionally?
Well, it's strange to see Lower Broadway with nobody there. I mean, that just doesn't happen. Lower Broadway, it doesn't matter what time of the year, Lower Broadway is still packed. And now there's nobody there. It's a ghost town. It's just crazy. As far as we're concerned, I'm working on my third project with Jennifer Kane and Kelly. We are a contemporary Christian songwriting duo and performer, and we're working on our third album right now. So that's how my musical life is staying alive. we love writing together. She's a great singer, and we sing really well together, sound good. We've got our second single radio on the charts. It's number 7 on the Inspirational Country Music charts, number 7.
Congratulations.
And our first single went to number 1, stayed there for a month. So so yeah, that's how I'm staying musically together, and I do take outside projects. Somebody can call me now because I have a studio, a modest home studio, and I like to take projects from other people and kind of do what I can with them and make some good sounding demos and stuff. So that's how I'm staying alive, and then working a little day job here and there and just keep the food on the table. And Alan, you do what you got to do, right?
Absolutely. That's the
strength of this country. Is no matter what happens to this country, people they pull themselves up and they get the job done, and that's an admirable quality, I think. And that's what we all seem to be doing right now.
It is. It's funny you should use that term too, Bill. My mom passed away about 5 years ago, and she was in the hospital, and it was before she went into the ICU, and she was still talking to me one day, and I told her how, she was getting some treatments, and I said, "No, you're the strongest person I know." And she just looked at me, she goes, "I'm just doing what I got to do." And she said, and you do what you got to do. And, I have that hanging in my house, and it's on my Facebook banner, and that's what we're all doing right now. That's for sure. So I'm glad you're doing it, and
thank you.
And I appreciate you taking some time tonight to share some of your memories of Jerry and some of your thoughts and how you're doing down there in Nashville during COVID-19. Bill, always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. Thanks so much.
Alan, thank you for calling. I appreciate it very much. You take care.
You too.